I have watched every jungle guides and summarized what I learned from them. In this video, I will teach you how to play as a better jungler, but I won't teach you simple tricks such as practicing your retribution. Instead, I will teach you the drafting phase, all the way to the late game. So make sure that you don't just watch the video, but also do everything that I teach you. We will start from the drafting phase. The drafting phase should not be underestimated, since if you draft the correct jungler, you can dominate the match. When picking a jungler, you should choose ones that are fast rotators, good gankers, fast farmers, or have good retry power. The more of these a jungler has, the better they are for you to pick. This is because junglers that have these will give you and your team an advantage. A good example of a jungle that has most of this is Suyu. He's good at ganking thanks to his long dash and burst damage. He also farms quickly with his burst. He also has decent retry power because he has damage reduction when in immortal form. With all of these, Suyu has been a solid pick throughout the season. More examples of junglers with these are Nolan and Ling. Junglers can be divided into two types, tank and assassin. As an assassin jungler, your job is to take out enemy backline in team fights. And since most assassin junglers need to snowball, you also should try to kill as much as possible after reaching level 4. You should pick them when your team has a low amount of early game heroes, so you can help snowball the early game. As a tank jungler, your job is to help take objectives since you will have good retreat power, and also help initiate team fights, since most of the tankier junglers have good initiate and sustain. And since tank junglers can't snowball, you should try stopping the enemy jungler from snowballing by invading their jungle if possible. You should pick tank junglers when your team composition is full of squishies. Next is the early game. In this phase of the match, your focus should be to take the turtle, gank, or invade as much as possible, since doing these gives your team a gold or exp advantage. For rotation, ideally, you should start from the buff opposite to the X-Plane, to gank it first, since if your X-Planer is winning, it will be much easier to take the turtle. But if you don't trust your teammates, you can start from the buff opposite to the gold lane to stop the enemy gold laner from farming. When ganking, try waiting for the enemy to be farther from their tower, and wait until they have wasted their dashes to increase the chance that you kill them. You should also make sure that the enemy isn't setting up an ambush for you when rotating to gank. When trying to invade the enemy jungle, you should wait until you know where the enemies are so you don't end up getting killed. And if your jungle is getting invaded, don't force it or you might die. Instead, you should try invading the enemy's jungle instead. Next is the turtle. When taking the turtle, don't rush in by yourself without knowing the enemy's position, since you might get ambushed. Instead, you should wait for your mage, tank, or XP laner to help you take it. And a trick to give you a higher chance to win a retry battle is to use a skill that has high damage output along with your retry at the same time. And if you are outnumbered in the turtle fight, don't force it. Instead, you can trade off the turtle by stealing a buff or ganking the gold lane. Next, we have the mid-game. In this phase, your priority should be helping out team fights and taking objectives, and you can start farming minions for gold since you will be able to get all of the gold from the minions now. During this phase, if you are a tank jungler, help open the map for your teammates and check bushes so your damage dealers don't get ambushed. In team fights, assassin junglers should wait for the enemies to use up their crowd control skills first before joining the fight. This is because most assassin junglers are countered by crowd control. If your team is losing, you don't need to force the first lord since it can't really do much anyway. Lastly, we have the late game. During the late game, your focus should be to secure the Lord with your retry, since getting the Lord can turn the tides of any match. And in this phase, you need to pay attention to the map more to find potential enemies to pick off, and to also make sure you won't get ambushed, since if you die, you will most likely lose the Lord and get overwhelmed. Junglers should also save their retry and ult before a Lord fight to maximize your chances to secure the Lord. This was the summary of what I learned from the guides I watched. My channel is new, so if you want more videos, you should subscribe since it helps me out a ton. And if you enjoyed this video, you should watch this one next.